Hello, and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, a podcast focused on men's health and emotional awareness. Jason, a licensed therapist with over 18 years of experience, and I, being profoundly affected by the death of my son, share grounded conversations and practical insights to help men navigate modern life with clarity and intention. If this podcast hits home for you, please like, share, and subscribe. A quick 5-star review helps us reach more men who can be helped by hearing this material. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Instagram, and TikTok under Guys Dealings with Feelings. So, what's going on, Jason?
Hey man, just coming out of the crazy
Yeah.
ice apocalypse over here.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still in it. So, today we're going to tackle self-trust and intuition. And most men don't struggle because they don't know what to do. We struggle because we don't trust ourselves enough to do it. Somewhere along the way, we've learned to override our instincts, second guess what we feel, and outsource our decisions to others. So today we're gonna focus on rebuilding self-trust in a grounded, practical way by learning to listen to the signals that never actually went away. And I know this is true for me. Um, I feel like I don't, as we navigate through the whole podcast, we'll kind of get to some of this, but I ignore mine, or I'm not as in tune as I should be with my intuition, and therefore I get to an actual my body knows to turn anxiety on, because as soon as anxiety turns on, I know to start focusing immediately on everything on self to identify where it's coming from, why, and so we can eliminate it, because I have had such a rough go with anxiety. So I don't know if that's just a trigger, that's something my body's created as a coping mechanism that says, well, this silly son of a bitch won't listen to this, so he'll listen to that, and it'll fire my anxiety up. So, in getting into what self trust actually is, it's confidence in your internal signal. It's not certainty about outcomes. It is trusting our ability to respond, adapt, and recover. Most men confuse self trust with being right or being correct, which we do a whole podcast on what does that mean? And an example of this would be staying in a relationship, marriage, or otherwise, because you don't trust, or a job, because you don't trust yourself to survive leaving it. And I think that's the one that's going to hit home with most people. We find ourselves in a position that's not where we want to be, and we've probably had to do some work to even get to that point, because the first thing is feeling stuck, overwhelmed. Some other things we've touched on in the past, where one is like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel so awful? I mean, I've been with my wife since we got out of high school. I've had a good job. I go to work. I've done all the things. I've bought a house. I've bought a car. Uh, why am I not happy? And I've got some stuff about this in my book, and it's because we haven't been focusing on ourselves and our lives and what we want. We've been focusing on what we were taught to want, and there's an internal struggle that begins to occur there. Jason may shed some light on this, but where we're kind of dueling with what we know we want and love versus what we've been taught we quote unquote should do.
I'm looking up
To
the actual how intuition may be defined, like
Yeah, so, in where I find intuition kicking into anxiety is when I'm making a wrong decision, and I think a lot of that's gonna come, does come from, the beliefs I've created based on prior wrong decisions, and how I knew in those moments I was making a bad decision while making the bad decision, thinking that it was the best decision. And I think what we're going to focus on today is really not focusing on an outcome, but focusing on what it is that who we are, want, need, etc. And I think that's, if you haven't done some self work and you haven't gotten to a point where you really know that, that's probably going to be the step one, is identification of self. We did that identity episode, but focusing on where it is you want to go and who, you are at my age. I'm 48. At this age, what do I really want? And um, if I look around and I see myself in a marriage that I'm no longer happy in, she's not happy. Um, I look at a job and I'm like, what am I even doing? I, I feel like ramming my head through a wall every time I wake up, I have to pull myself out of the bed, these things. And I know the clock's always ticking, and it's the proverbial clock, obviously, figuratively speaking. There's no real clock, that's just made up, but there is a clock on our lives, and the hourglass is running out at every second that ticks by. And internally, there's things inside us that know that. And whether you hit this existential crisis at the midlife crisis point that so many do in America, where you snap and just start buying shit and doing crazy things, and it's really what I would say is trying to identify what is it that makes me happy. You think again, red convertible, that's going to make me happy, or big fancy house, or huge vacation, um, divorce and chase younger women, older women, whatever it is you're into. Um, so I think that that is something that'll hit with folks is, fuck, I do feel stuck. And this is kind of where we find ourselves when we chip away at who we are and fail to listen to our internal and just are listening to this external stuff and outsource our decision making, which is wild. We wouldn't do that consciously. We wouldn't say, hell yeah, I'm going to let somebody else make all the decisions. But then we put ourselves in positions to do exactly that.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on big ones, not just small decisions, on big
How did
decisions.
you say it earlier? You said, when I think you said something like, "When I'm not following my intuition and then anxiety kicks in." I can't exactly remember how you said it. It's when I'm not doing something right, I think is how you said it.
It's when I'm making a decision that I know is not what I think I should be doing. And then the other thing I said was when I don't pay attention to my intuition, my anxiety will kick in. And I don't know if that's a coping mechanism that my body's come up with because they're like, they being all the parts inside of me, uh, or like he's not gonna act if we don't throw some anxiety in there. If we throw some anxiety in there, he's going to stop. He's going to reflect. He's going to figure out what it is that's uneasing what's interrupting his flow, and he's going to identify it and do it. Whereas an intuition, I'd be like, my gut says don't do this, but everything I've
Yeah,
learned says that if I
yeah,
do it, it'll be the right move. So
I got you. I think you can approach it maybe from we could talk a little bit about what the screen says is intuition, right? So, because that's what we're talking about, right? What is it that informs our life and then our desires and actions and what's informing us, right? And the if you look over just Google or whatever, dude, this is how it is talked about, right? This is what's referred to as the scientific view. Um, so it says your brain is constantly scanning patterns from past experiences. When you're not paying attention, when the current situation matches stored patterns well enough, it triggers a recognition response. That's intuition. So, that's defining intuition as pattern recognition, right? The
in
brain's
avoidance of pain
consistently,
or in seeking the pleasure, which I think I learned
yeah, at a level,
recently.
at one biological level, or at the biological level.
Yeah, I saw something the other day, a neurologist
It's
talking
a
about.
universal dynamic.
Yeah, okay. And I heard a neurologist talking the other day about how much more the body reacts to fear, I guess is the best way to say it, but pain or avoidance of than it does to pleasure. And we look at how much the amygdala has control of and can do in an instant to our body as far as firing chemicals, firing responses throughout the body, whereas the pleasure sensors are nowhere near as powerful.
Mhm,
And
mhm. Yeah.
he made it clear with you. You may mistake a rock for a bear, but you won't mistake a bear for a rock. And the body is we're driven by that, and he was doing it on he was basically saying how he can brainwash somebody pretty quick, even through advertising, and how you touch on, you drive them to a fear point. We all know that.
Fear.
So many commercials are pointed at fear
Mm.
to drive us. So anyway, the
At one
the
point in
the
time, as far as I'm uh, as far as I'm aware, I've read it, uh, but I didn't go confirm it. But I've
deep
read
research.
that the head of advertising for Hummer at one point in time, his nickname was Doctor Death. So that was how they're intentionally evoking that frequency, really. Um,
Mhm. Scare you into thinking the death is around the corner, and this will help.
well, it's really like this: continue to put a spell on you that says what you're feeling can be satisfied through buying something.
Mm,
So that's a better way to talk about it,
yeah.
right? Um, so let me, part of the intention of the podcast is to explore what is it, right? And maybe specifically for men, how does that apply to our unique experience, right? Um, so there's an evolutionary, the way that right now, the way that I'm thinking about it is, in this moment is just by trying to utilize the principle of evolution. It's a principle of life, right? Life evolves. A property of life is evolution and to transcend. Like for instance, if you go from the atomic level up to whatever the molecular chemistry, right? Like if you go up a level, it will transcend the level below it, but include the properties of that lower level, right? So you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So a muscle that's made up of smaller building blocks, those smaller building blocks can't, like an atom, is not. Are you following my logic? It's not. Okay. So that's what life does. It evolves, it transcends and includes, right? And as a species, we're currently in a process of evolution. And the evolution is about moving from the dimension of thinking primarily deeper into the dimension of feeling.
We're going to that or back to that?
I don't. Uh,
You see
all
what I
I
mean?
know
Like we
is,
went through a phase of we had that, right?
well,
Or was it more we were knocking off needs
there
of
are myths in the human collective that refer to days of the past, a golden age, and we do have this tendency that when there's pressure on that evolutionary principle, you either transcend or you die, right? Um, I forgot what you had said that made me sort of.
so you're headed you were going on the line of we're headed from a
You said,
thinking
"Are we
being into
going
a
back?"
feeling,
So
and I'm
there
wondering.
are there are myths, and I suppose you could. It's interesting to talk about um, cycles on the planet, and every culture has had ideas around that. The Indians have idea around yugas. Native Americans have had different ideas around cycles, and the Mayans did. Right? That's a familiar part of the human experience for us. So whether we're coming back or remembering, or it doesn't matter. This what's happening now is we're moving from a thinking centered left brain dominant um, disordered system to a more balanced and ordered system. So on an individual level, that is playing out in the movement from being a primarily or experiencing life primarily through the thinking patterns to a fuller experience as that has a more depth of feeling. It actually means really we're evolving into being conscious of the reality of our multidimensionality. So the reality that everything is energy. Um, so intuition is a natural state for us when we're in a natural state, and know, and we have familiarity with the frequencies of fear and shame and guilt, which are shadow frequencies that are perpetually affecting us individually and collectively,
and
right?
getting us out of our natural state.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, some people would say that we're going back to the natural state, or it didn't. But because of the pressures that this world contains, the heaviness of it, the denseness of this experience for the body, right? It affects our body, and we talk about it in all the podcasts, right? It affects our body in such a way that we don't know how to get out of the frequencies of fear and shame and all those survival based frequencies that come from our experience of being cut off and dislocated in the universe. See, it feels to us like we're cut off from everything. And so when you're dislocated and cut off from everything, essentially the vulnerabilities of the body and the need to survive become highlighted because everything's disconnected. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like you to go a little further on it. I do know, when we get into how this stuff gets broken, the childhood environments where emotions are dismissed and punished, trauma, trained vigilance instead of intuition, repeatedly betraying yourself to maintain peace or approval, being rewarded for performance rather than honesty. Um, each ignored truth weakens the internal signal. And is that kind of what you're
Well,
getting
but
into, and
let me
how
speak to
how
it
that's
well
severing?
even more. So okay, at the heart of every cell of your body, 60 trillion cells, like right now, is DNA, which is a electromagnetic binary superconductor of electricity. It's a salt. It's like literally what it is. And it is receiving information at all times from the environment it's in. Okay. And what the DNA is doing is it's a frequency to chemistry machine based off of the environment I find myself in. I'm speaking as DNA. Then what do I release here? What do I allow in? What do I release? What proteins? What amino acids? What you see what I mean by that?
Hmm. Each one as they
Each
receive its
cell
signal.
at all times, day and night, at all times, right? So, as soon as the embryo, at moment of conception, when we're in our mother's environment, even though we're protected theoretically, from the outside world,
There's still
so to
exposure.
speak, well, at a chemical level, which affects the neurophysiological development. So our mothers were stressed and strained and also lived in a culture that was as brutal as ours and atheistic and anyway, but I can go into we can go into all that, we do, right? But so we would have already our neurophysiological development begins to be affected by the toxic chemical environment, right? Immediately in utero, right? And so that automatically starts to um, build a body that's wired for protection and survival in a world that's full of separate and different individuals that are all competing for resources, or in a world that's just chance and random. And so we start to get affected right away and our neurological immediately. And so when you come out wired for protection, that it means that you're cut off from the environment and your inner environment. You're cut off from what you're feeling. It's mechanical by definition. And so the majority of us have been conditioned and programmed um, in a way that causes us to primarily relate to life through the thinking patterns. And those thinking patterns are just very limited um, to our experience into the past.
Not the entire bodies,
No, well, our yeah, our
just the
well, no, I mean the whole body's affected. So, um, but it moves our awareness out of the feeling dimension because it's been too painful and we lacked context and we weren't able to process what was happening.
okay. I
Um,
got you.
So our at the level of attention, like proportionally, our individual levels of our individual awareness moves into the thinking patterns and sort of gets stuck there. Um, and so we have habits of just being addicted to the thinking patterns.
And that's what will lead us to make decisions or to follow decision
Yeah, for
making
instance,
that's
if
against
you
our
take
gut.
your example, the I don't even I'm not trying to be cute or anything, but I don't really like to use the word anxiety anymore. Like it's fine. It's just what you're describing is when you're having an experience that that equals you not knowing what the frequency of fear is. And so you can't name it. You see what I mean by that?
Yeah, it's a disruption that I'm unable to identify, and so it
You
comes in
can't
a
name it as
general
fear.
term.
And fear is a frequency. And as a human, when we've had our life, our lived experience has been primarily in the head, it means we have very limited awareness around the reality of frequency and energy. It's just more conceptual to us, right? It's just concept. Oh, everything's energy. Well, yeah. And so so fear is a frequency. And when you're not aware of frequency, which comes through the process of embodiment, deeper feeling, more embodied, right? When you're not aware of frequency, when it's active, you can't metabolize it and relax. So the body starts to activate, heart rate elevates, everything starts to contract, and then your attention flushes into those old patterns of control. It's like a loop. And the loop continues to occur because of a lack of awareness of frequency and the frequency of fear.
And that's why identification is so important
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
to stop the
you should
loop.
say it's a necessary component. Yeah, yeah. And but that identification occurs at the level of feeling.
That's what I mean. Being able to identify what it is in the moment that I'm in. I'm calling it an anxiety, and you're
Yeah,
saying,
it's
well,
fear.
you can keep going deeper and identify.
Anxiety is a very shallow level description. That not to be I'm not being at
I
all.
understand you're not
But
judging. You're just saying it's not there. Yeah, I could continue to go.
technically,
Yeah, and that's
technically,
I think that's what happens is that I get there's the agitation, which I'm defining as anxiety, just as an expression of how I feel, and you
which
would
is another
understand
way
that.
of saying it is a lack of presence. A
Yeah,
lack of
but
presence.
because what it does is it triggers me to get back to presence, to I
Well,
in
but
that
see, but
with
what it does
identify.
is it triggers you to get your attention back into planning and controlling. That's what it does. It doesn't get you back to stillness and peace because the frequency is recognized and released.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I have the feeling, the agitation
Yeah.
triggers me to say I need to stop.
And in that moment, what actually is the most potent is just simple breathing and focusing on what's happening in the body. But what typically happens is we focus more on the planning.
So yeah, I see what you're saying, and if, to relieve the anxiety, I'll stop and do breathing, whether it's box breathing or whatever, to really ground. But then
Yeah,
to
yeah,
find
and the
this
energy.
right, but I do get into thought as far as identification of what it is that has caused the agitation, because it's not an agitation like somebody cut me off at the
Yeah.
stoplight or whatever.
Yeah, it
It's
just
an
happens at
agitation like
any time. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just rolling.
If
Everything's
you
great.
if you use the analogy of electricity, because that's what we're really talking about, in that heightened it's like a heightened electrified state. Okay, the current's running hot, and it's pushing your attention forward. Right? See what I mean? So for electricity to be balanced and what like most efficient, it's got to be balanced and grounded, right? And so when you breathe and focus on the body, activating the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, a way that you could talk about that at the level of energy in you could talk about it esoterically, that is offering space to that energy to metabolize in the body. because all the thoughts and attending to it's that's crowding out the ability to process. So essentially, when we do that and activate the parasympathetic branch of the body, it's adding a ground, it's adding a negative, it's adding in ground, and so it balances out the field in that moment. And one of the things that will occur is it will then open up more of a capacity to all the regions of the brain. So then the prefrontal cortex is back online. You see what I'm because in that heightened state, the prefrontal cortex gets sort of shoved in the background. The amygdala, the limbic system are kind of ahead of the herd. And those systems harken back to very ancient origins for us,
Yeah.
very primal. Uh, and those are dimensions of our experience we've transcended in a way, but they still are exerting influence biologically. But we're human, and we're more than that. We're built to transcend our biological nature. Not to say that it's bad, but we're more than these bodies. That's what who we are, right? That's why we can pose the question, "Who am I? Who are we?" Because we're not just an animal. We are at a level. We are, right? Procreate. Every animal wants to expand its environment. Every animal wants to uh, make its reality better, right? So just because we can get into a rocket ship and go to the moon, it doesn't make us special, really. It makes us special because we're part of this web of creatures that do the same shit, except we're different, not better, different. We have the capacity to transcend these dynamics, which is what you and I are talking about through awareness and courage and support and knowledge and action.
So I think that leads into intuition being a body signal, not a thought. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
what you were going through with us just then.
Yeah.
Intuition
It's
often
the
shows
signal. I'd
uh,
call it the signal.
the signal, huh?
Yeah.
And
That's what I would describe it as.
it shows up as intuition often shows up as sensations, tightness, expansion, pull, or resistance. The body registers the information before the mind explains it, kind of what you were just saying. The body's doing a whole bunch of shit as it's happening, and then it dawns on our conscious self what's going on. And overthinking is often mistrust disguised as logic. Again, a point you were making, and anxiety is loud and urgent versus intuition, which is quiet and consistent.
Well, I want to like sort of paint an image of what I mean by the signal. Okay. Um, the first part of all of our experiences could be described as a sense of dislocation, being cut off from the universe and others, right? Like separate. That's the sense of things for us, right? And but again, we're in this process of evolution. And so what did the cell do? The single cell evolved from a single cell organism to a multicellular organism, right? That's what we're doing. And as one evolves from a sense of being a single celled organism into a multi-celled organism, where you're different than other people, but there's no better or worse. It's all the same thing. As that occurs and you evolve into that higher version of ourselves, which is where we're all going, as that occurs, it automatically means you step into the signal because now you're no longer a separate cell cut off from everything. You're in it. You are life in it, living it. It's living through you, in you, as you. And that's where we're going. So that's the signal. It's the signal is actually the knowledge that like everything's okay, even though it's painful, that everything's okay because life uh, is intricately designed and we're a part of it. And 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 as you move into deeper into the field of feeling, that how can I say this? You don't meet as many experiences of resistance in life. You're just flowing with the day and life the way that it is, right? Many of our, I mean, our experience of resistance is just a lack of being able to accept the way things are in any given moment. I may have gone off on a,
Well,
did
no,
I lose
no,
the
it's
thread?
okay. It lends to a question. It's a little to the side, but my question to you would be, and this could, I think it's more of a
Yeah.
philosophical question. I don't think that you're like, oh yes, the answer to that came from book
Yeah.
such and
Yeah.
such with page such and such. But I is so where do you think intuition is stems from other than the patterns? You gave us the scientific definition from Google, where it's the body's
Mhm.
recognition of patterns, and it's basically it's prediction of
Yeah.
results. So
Okay. I got
does it
it.
is it
As we,
born
as
pre
our,
us?
as our, oh, is it born? Yeah. So here's how I would answer that question. That's already here. Our, what we're working to do is be able to pick up the signal. Um, and so, it is about pattern recognition, but being able to recognize deeper pattern recognition, right? And when we're primarily up here in the thinking patterns, we're just that's a it's mechanically means we just are able to recognize smaller patterns. Um, and so then getting down and deeper into the feeling dimension, that's being able to uh, understand and have awareness around larger patterns of movement. Because think about it. Think about how old we that if you think about feelings and how much older those are, how much you see what I mean? Like those are deeper flows of primordial information, if that makes sense, you know. And so uh as we move deeper into the dimension of feeling, it just is again that if it makes logical sense. It's opening our awareness up into deeper pools of information,
Okay. So our intuition is a connection outside
to those deeper pools that
to
are
the
just a
deeper pools.
part of the whole web of the energetic structure of life. Uh, but see, these structures they lie in our bodies. These are all the past is represented in the body, the limbic system. I mean, the whole thing has been this process of transcendence, of right, of transcendence and evolution. You know, different regions of the brain, different properties. Right. Go ahead.
It's what all is going on. I mean, we talked about it in a previous episode about being on a floating rock in space, but the shit going on inside of us is pretty wild too. We're gonna run through these a couple things. Why men override their quote unquote gut, fear of disappointing others. All of them are going to be fear, fear of instability or uncertainty, fear of being wrong, fear of standing alone, and self trust is going to erode through small compromises, not just one. You're not going to make one decision that's going to blow it away. It's going to be chipping away, like we talked about, water over a rock and how that works out. And a way of rebuilding self trust through integrity. So keeping small promises to self, acting on what we know, not just what feels comfortable. And so that kind of goes back to where I was talking about. I, there's a way I know this is the right decision, but something's telling me otherwise in my head, and I'm thinking it out, and I'm going to go this way. Well, lo and behold, I'm going to find myself where I don't want to be. Let your actions match your internal truth. Choose alignment over approval. And self trust is going to grow when our nervous system learns that you have your own back. I've got my own back. And to Jason's point, to go deeper into it, and it's not a thought process, it's not a thinking through the things, it's really getting back. The further we get down the internalization of self and getting into self and feelings and understanding and all of that is then when we would begin to really have some clarity on our intuition. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could say that this evolutionary process that we're in is a process that means we're learning to integrate the shadow, integrate the shadow of our history and of the past, right? So that's what's happening at an individual level. That's what's happening at a collective level, right? Now, when you think about an animal, what I do, I imagine instinct being really attuned to the environment, you know?
Sure, looking at your dog or your cat
Yeah,
in the
but
house.
but but like subtle things, you know? And so for us, that field or that dimension, um, that's available to us, but that's when the whole body comes online more fully. When we're going through life primarily addicted to the thinking patterns, it automatically means we're out of the field of instinct and we're in the field of like past and control because we're not really receiving all the information the body's given to us, you see? Right? And so it's there for us. It's this auto this available in the through the body. It's just we got to unlock that potential. It's been we've been locked out of that potential. Um, and so the healing process is really a unlocking of a potential that's dormant in all of us.
And would it also be true to say that it's also letting our instinctual selves work in our favor versus working against us, like we were just
It's
talking
a
about?
great way to say it. It actually means we're developing the agency to feel all these visceral primal things without being controlled by them.
Yeah. That's another way. That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to say. Right now, they're just flying up at us and making us
Yeah.
do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if
Yeah.
we were in with it, we could kind of,
Yeah.
navigate life with them instead of in
Yeah.
spite of them, which is
Yeah.
where so many of us live, I think.
Mm,
Me too. I mean, I definitely
100%.
live. I definitely live there. I am not where I want to be. I got a long way to go. And this week's practical tool, the body check in. And this is going to be, I think there's probably going to be some work leading up to this as all the others, we kind of put them together. But as always, we're going to have to stop for a second, take a breath, and feel what it would be like. And this is in a decision moment. When you're in a decision moment, feel what it would be like in the body if I say yes, then feel what it would feel like in the body if I say no. Notice your sensations without analysis and choose the option that feels clearer, not safer. And I think that these are, as I go through them, a lot of work leading up to it. if you can,
Yeah.
if you're running that tool, you've gotten into at least into an area where you're understanding yourself. You're not just working in spite of the instinctual self. You're actually getting in some flow with it. So, self trust isn't built by waiting for confidence. It's built by choosing yourself when it's uncomfortable. Your intuition didn't disappear; it learned you weren't listening. As men, the work isn't to become fearless, but to become trustworthy to ourselves. And it's a process. It's a constant process. It's going to the gym, if you will, over and staying in it, staying in it, staying in it, understanding self, knowing what these feelings are, knowing yourself, and then once you're in that, how far you'll be able to go is immeasurable. And as always, we thank you for giving us your time, which is your most valuable asset. Until next time, stay in the fight. The world's a much better place with you in it.